Greetings, Leuchtturmians. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. Today is going to be a different show. Normally we cover freedom and liberty and philosophy and ethics and current events and stuff like that on this channel. But today we're going to do something maybe useful. Today we're going to cover something more basic and just plain useful for life. So as some of you may have known, I have successfully started and transitioned out of several companies in my entrepreneurial background in the IT industry. And I wanted to share with you guys one of the primary tools that I used to stay organized and to stay productive and to not lose my tasks and to sort of track day to day what I need to do. And the short version of that is a word that some of you may have heard of because it got kind of trendy there for a few years. It's kind of, I don't know if it's dying off or whatever, but there's a lot of misconceptions about this term called bullet journal as an organizational tool. What I use is sort of a pared down, simplified, streamlined bullet journal. Now, some people, you can, and I suggest this, maybe hop on YouTube and search for bullet journal tutorials and just bullet journal in general, and you are going to find a mass wad of videos with all sorts of people doing it all sorts of different ways. And in my experience, most of those people are coming at it from more of an art project, sort of doodle book, or I don't know. They spend more time on sort of the aesthetics of it. This tutorial is going to be on how I used this bullet journal concept. And the cool thing about the concept is it's just kind of a starting point, and you then take it however you need it to be for you and what you work best. So if making it artsy keeps you interested and motivated in staying organized, then by all means, you do you. But I want to show you how I modified the kind of bullet journal plan to fit how I used it to run companies successfully. And because it was so useful to me, I'm pretty sure it's going to help at least a few people out there. So the first thing I want to say is, I'm an IT entrepreneur. By default, I am into tech, all things tech. If it can't be done on the computer, I'm really not much interested in it. And I think it can probably be done better on the computer. So before I discovered this method, I was pretty much staying organized using things like Google Calendar and Microsoft's OneNote product, both of which I still use, and I'll explain how that fits into this system later. But I was really skeptical of transitioning out of the computer world, out of the information technology world where, anything I put in OneNote can be synced instantly across all my devices and blah, 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 blah. And why would I ever want to carry around a book with me all the time and a pen and write things on parchment like some monk, 1,000 years ago. But I tried it, and wow, am I glad I did. And I want to share with you why this IT person thinks it's actually technically, physically, practically better to use a journal like this or a bullet journal organization method like this. So without further ado, let's just get into the actual method and the tools that you need for the method. And then as we go, I'll explain where sort of the diamonds in the rough are and what makes a difference and what makes this method different from typical Google Calendar and OneNote based organizational methods. The first thing that you need for this method is some sort of journal. Let me make this bigger. Is some sort of journal like this, a book. Now, there are multiple books that you can use. There are many different types of books that you can use, and I'm going to run down the main options here first and then make some recommendations. So the most popular by far is this right here called the Leuchtturm 1917. And I'm going to put Amazon links in the description for those that want to go straight to the exact products I'm talking about, and also at the same time, because they're affiliate links, support the channel and the work that we do here. So let's start with the most popular. Here is the Leuchtturm 1917 medium A5 dotted hardcover notebook with 249 numbered pages. It is this exact book right here. You can kind of see how big it is from the size of my hand. It is not a full-size 8.5 by 11 style paper, but it's also not so small that you can easily fit in a pocket. It's kind of just right, honestly. If I was still traveling a lot in business, which I'm not currently doing, this or maybe the size up from it is what I would definitely go back to be using. So this is an A5 notebook, and it says dotted hardcover. I prefer the hardcover just because it holds up better. And dotted. Now let's get into, before I show you the other options, let's get into the different types of these books. And I have them pulled up here. Inside the book, on each page, you're not going to be able to see well on the camera. That's why I pulled up this image behind me. There are 3 ways you can get these books. You can get them dotted, you can get them squared, and you can get them lined. My preference by far is the dotted, because I can then, I can use the dotted to write straight lines, but they're not intrusive. I can use the dotted to guide straight lines if I'm drawing or underlying or sketching something. It's just the most versatile without being like overly intrusive. And the squared, I think, is the worst. I mean, maybe unless you're drafting or an architect or something, and most of what you're doing in these books is like drawing exact to scale pictures, maybe go with the squared. And then the other, maybe second most popular, is just the plain lined. It's lined, it's ruled paper, just kind of like you've seen everywhere. I by far prefer the dotted, and so the links that I'm giving you in the description are to exactly what I would use, which is the dotted versions of these books. And then there's just basically 2 other sizes. This is the A6, again, link in the description. The A6 version, which again is more hardcovery. It's A6 smaller, definitely small enough to fit in a pocket, but really I don't want to say too small for this system to work. I'm just kind of on it. So maybe if you want something smaller, that's you. And then here's the big business version. This is the full size A4, 8.5 by 11 sheet paper notebook. So if you are doing more like if you need to take a lot of notes, or if you're putting a lot of content in here, because again, the bullet journal method does not limit you to specifically like writing down tasks and checking them off. I keep notes for all meetings in here. Any brainstorming activities, any lists that I need to create. It's a very customizable on the fly system. So there's a lot of stuff in these books that has nothing to do with the actual day-to-day tasks that I'm accomplishing. So if you predict that you're going to be having a lot of other types of content like that, go for the large one. A little bit more of a pain in the ass to carry around. You probably want a backpack or a briefcase or something like that, to keep it with you all the time. Because a big part of this is you want to have this with you most of the time you're out there in the world being productive. So those are the 3 primary options. Now, again, this is literally, you can do whatever you want with it. You can, get one of these like fancy leather bound strapped, books with a whole bunch of sheets of all kinds of different paper, some ruled and lined and some blank entirely, which is fine too, if that's your thing. Like right now, because I'm really not traveling at all, and I had this book kind of laying around, I've got this super fancy, leather bound book that I'm using for my current bullet journal. And this has enough pages in it that it might even last more than 1 year. But certainly if I start traveling or, need it to be more portable again, I would transition back to one of the Leuchtturms. But yeah, you can literally use any book you want that has blank pages to your taste. Okay, so now let's talk about the only other thing that you need for this process is you need a good pen. Let's have some adult time here. So, growing up when you're kids, you use markers and whatever random stuff you can find. When you're in high school, you probably use a lot of ballpoint, like Bic pens and stuff like that. Well, we're grown-ups now, so we need to have slightly more sophisticated writing utensils that are, longer lasting, easier to use, and provide just an overall better writing experience. Now, in business, I met a lot of executive types that have these $800 fountain pens, these $1,200, $2,500 fountain pens with gold nibs and all this insanity. In my opinion, that is just dumb. That is really dumb. To carry that kind of money around with you is anyway. So I'm going to give you like no frills, like everyday carry kind of rough stuff that still just ups the bar into adulthood maturity just a little bit. And let's start with, this pen right here. Let me show you here. This is the Muji aluminum fountain pen, $19 on Amazon. It isn't currently a Prime item, but I think it goes on and off of Prime. Let me kind of pull it up a little bit larger here for you. Really, it's a fountain pen. Really, really, really good value. Like it's metal, so I keep this in my pocket all day. And it doesn't get destroyed and scratched and broken. It's got a really cool, like satisfying kind of rubber seal on it when you cap it so it doesn't leak. There's misconceptions about fountain pens. People think they're like a super pain in the ass. They think they leak and destroy your clothes. They think you have to refill them constantly. Almost none of any of the rumors that you've heard about using fountain pens are true anymore. And this is a prime example. So this pen, again, it's got another rubber seal up top. It feels really good in the hands. It's got a nice roughed up area here that you actually hold it from when you're writing. And it's got a very fine tip on it. So it doesn't look like you're writing in calligraphy. You don't want to, because sometimes you just want to write some notes and you don't need it to be all fancy. So as a basic pen, this is such a huge upgrade over the normal ballpoint style pens that you're used to. Definitely get this. Now, just to dispel some of the other myths, this pen will come with, I don't even know if they have a picture of it here, but they sell it with ink cartridges. And I think it comes with one. And, you have to buy refills, which is kind of a pain in the ass. And it just feels it feels less sophisticated. So I'm going to show you, and I'll also, again, links to all this in the description. If you buy this little $6 converter, which is what you can see I have in my pen here, it just allows you to basically dip your pen in the bottle of nice semi-fancy ink that will last you literally forever for $12. You dip it in there and you twist down, you twist back up. It sucks the ink into the pen. And guys, I've been writing with this for 2 weeks, pretty heavily every day writing on a single fill. So it's not like, you're going to have to carry a bottle of ink around with you when using this pen. That is not the case at all. This will last a very long time, and it's really easy to see when it's starting to get low. You can then, just remember that evening to pump it back up. So get yourself a grown-up pen. It just feels better in general for everyday life and everything you do. It's not a requirement, obviously, for this sort of productivity process. That's my recommendation. Again, links for all of it in the description. Okay, so now we have the tools. Let's get into the process. So I'm going to actually draw out in this video a brand new, every page and section of a new bullet journal in the style that I do for you. A lot of the tutorial videos you find on YouTube will just be snapshot pictures of their existing bullet journals that's already been filled with a bunch of fluff and crap, and it's a little bit harder to follow. So I'm going to actually draw it out in Photoshop here using this image of a bullet journal and actually talk you through what each section does and what each part of this process gives you. There are 6 main sections to a bullet journal. And before we dive in and actually create each of the sections, there's a few important things that your journal might even come with built in. Some of the Leuchtturms have, some of the important sections already labeled for you. And the cool thing about the Leuchtturms in general are that the pages are numbered already for you. But if your particular journal doesn't have page numbers, you're going to need to remember to write those on the bottom of each page, sort of as you get to that section of the book. Just every time you flip to a new spread, that's what this is called, like 2 blank pages open like this is called a spread. Just remember to jot down the page numbers. You can see here at the bottom, this Leuchtturm already has the page numbers for us. So the 6 main sections that I use. Now, again, this is not the standard bullet journal method that most of the other people on the internet use. This is sort of like the streamlined, raw productivity version that I successfully used and have been using since, this is actually my very first bullet journal. I have been using since 2014. I've kind of refined it over the years. So what I'm going to teach you here today is not the standard, but this is what really worked for me. There's probably a million tutorials on YouTube teaching you all the different standards and all sorts of other variations and additions. And maybe we'll cover some of the possible additions that you can use at the end, but let's get into it. The 6 main sections are, you have your key, you have your index, you have your year, and you can call these whatever you want. This is the year overview. This is an optional section that I use, well, we'll get to it when we get to that section. You have your future log, you have your month summary, and you have your daily log. The key will just simply lay out and help you remember some of the symbols that you'll draw next to tasks and entries in your book so you can remember what each type of entry is. You'll understand that once we draw it out. Then you have the index, which is going to just be an index like you'd see in any book. Anytime you add a new major section, or if you turn one of your pages into notes or brainstorming ideas or make a list for some purpose, you'll turn back to the index of your book. You'll write down the page number and the name of whatever it is that you did on that page so that if you need to find things very easily in the future, you can refer to your index. Imagine that. That's what an index is for. The year overview is optional. This is something I do. I'll explain it why when we get to it. Then you have the future log. This is not optional. This is part of sort of the task tracking system of the bullet journal. It's really kind of cool how this stuff comes together. Month summary, again, probably shouldn't be considered optional, but if you really wanted to pare it down, you probably could, though I would not. Then there's a section that I totally eliminated from I think the more basic bullet journal strategy, which is a weekly summary. This was definitely superfluous for me. It was just more work and writing. Ain't nobody got time for that when you're trying to get stuff done. And then the daily log. The daily log is the meat and potatoes of this system. So at the front of most of the books, you'll have a couple totally blank pages. Often this is where I put my key. I don't actually use one of the middle pages of the book for this. This is something on the very beginning that you only really ever look at when you need to remember what symbol to use to keep your strategy straight. So often on the very first page, I'll put my name, and I'll write much better than this. This is just for an example. I'll also on the front page maybe put like a motto for the year or some kind of overarching idea or goal or something I want to keep in my head, sort of to kind of encapsulate that year. So then I'll often put the year because I tend to use one of these per year. So this will be the 2020 journal. And I'll often also put my phone number, which I will not write here in this video. For anybody that finds it, I'll put a little, contact if found, reward if found note, because you'll notice that you get 3 to 6 months into the year and this book contains a lot of important information, sometimes private information, personal information that's important to you. And I have kept every journal that I've ever had, and I do go back and look at them from time to time. So a little message like that is good. The other thing I'll put, and so then we'll get to our key, and this is where the ladies will probably, get artsy with it. I will not be doing that here today. I'm just explaining the system. And again, this is customizable to what works for you. So if you don't like my symbols, use your own. These are not the standard bullet journal symbols. These are the ones that I've found to work best for me. So the most basic and frequent symbol that you'll use is the task symbol. For myself, I prefer the circle, an empty circle. And then oftentimes when you have tasks that run longer than, let's say, a day, I will use a half-filled circle to denote in progress. And then when I complete a task, I will use a filled-in circle. Then, and we'll get into the system later, you're going to need a symbol for what's called migrated, and a symbol for something in the system that is called scheduled. Then you will never be able to avoid things getting canceled or tasks that you no longer want to do. And this gets into one of the most useful parts of the system, which is the ability to cancel tasks. And we'll get to this again later. Then finally, you're going to have events, which I personally use a triangle for. And you'll have notes, which I just use a dash for. Very simple stuff. And then you're going to have what are called signifiers, which is just a fancy word for a symbol that makes something special. In this case, for me, and again, this is for you. If you have other things that you want to make special, come up with your own symbols. For me, I only use 2. I usually use a star for important, and I use an exclamation mark for something that is on a deadline. And deadline means like something that has to be done by the day that I put it in the journal. And if it needs to be done by a specific time, I'll show you, I'll put the time of day next to the item as well. That is my entire key. And, again, ladies, if you want to, draw this up, you can use these cute little squares and, put some flowers and, maybe angle it up a little bit, but not my thing. I'm here to be productive. So, you do you. Okay, now on to the first sort of functional section of your book. This is the index. Now, often I will make an index either one full spread, definitely one full spread, but sometimes I'll even use 2 full spreads, which basically means 4 total pages. So I'll write index at the top of the pages that I'm going to reserve for my index. And then what you basically do is as you create additional sections in the future, you'll come back to the index and you'll write down the page number that you find them on and what they are. So the index page is literally this. And again, you can flower it up if you want. So we'll come back here as we go through our journal and you can see how the index works. So now we're going to come to the annual overview section. This is the pretty much only optional section. I've kind of pared away everything else in the system that is optional or not really necessary. So only use this if you think it will help you. It certainly does me. So again, this is just going to be a quick overview of all of the months of the year laid out over, 2 spreads worth of pages, with each month, the days of the month, and then we'll record the major events that we know are going to happen in those months. This is going to be things like very important events like conferences, very important deadlines like, the end of some major project, and then other normal stuff like birthdays and non-standard holidays. You could even do holidays if you wanted, anniversary, stuff like that. I'm going to lay out for you the first 3 months, which will cover the first spread, and then you'll understand how to do the remaining 9 months. Okay, so that's the overview done. And look, this is the most artistic I get pretty much in the entire process. And I also drew these small vertically. The size of each of these sections will most likely depend on the size of your book, how many lines your book has. You might want to, plan ahead a little bit, divide them out evenly. I like to have 3 months per page. And then do 4 pages total, 2 spreads total in my overview. I just go through each month. I list the days of the week and I start with Monday. Most people will start with Sunday for some reason, but weeks start on Monday. That's just how it works. And then I do the numbers of the month just so I have a quick calendar anytime I need to look. And then in the right side of the section, I do the actual important events that happen in each month. And I'll use the same kind of symbols that we use in our key, triangles for events, exclamation points for major deadlines. You could do normal task type stuff, but these pages really aren't for task tracking unless they're like mega tasks. This is for the big stuff that you just want to remember as you move throughout the year. These sections aren't really updated ever unless, some new major deadline is added, but this section again is the optional section, and it's just kind of meant to give you a handy overview of the year and the calendar in the beginning of your book. So now we're going to move on to the future log. These are pretty important pages. And again, I like to do 3 months per page. So this will end up taking up 4 pages or 2 full spreads. This will be an actively updated section as you move throughout the year. And I'll explain it after I draw it out for you. This is much simpler. I don't do the doodling thing, although you certainly can. Okay, so your future log is where, you remember back when we looked at the key, let's look at our key here. We had this little symbol for scheduled. Well, that is what our future log is for. So the bullet journal strategy is all about never letting things fall off your plate and tracking things to completion and sort of being mindful of every task that is currently like on your plate or on your back, so to speak. And what I mean by mindful is like at the end of every day or at the beginning of the next day, depending on what time you choose to update your journal. I kind of prefer to do the beginning of every day. That way at night, my mind can like be free of thinking about this stuff. I get some good sleep. I wake up the next day. And then the process of updating your journal in the morning sort of loads into your brain RAM space all of the things that are needing to be done for that day. It also, and we'll get to this when we actually get to the daily log, but it allows you to revisit each of your tasks that is sort of on your shoulders and allows you to determine if the tasks are still valid, still a priority, and actually need to be done. Maybe the deadline changed. Maybe you've kind of you've decided to put them off until a future day, and that's what the future log is for. The future log is for sort of scheduling things out into the distant future, maybe the near future, whatever. So anytime that an item is going to need to be taken care of, at a time in the future, and you know in advance, and you can add a bunch of stuff to this in the beginning of your future log. When you first create your journal, you add them to the future log. That is literally what it is. It is a future schedule of things that you're going to need to add to your task list at that future time. So on this day, this can be things like, this can be events that you want to make sure and be ready for that might turn into tasks when it comes to that. This could be tasks that will not really need to begin until a certain day. It could be important deadlines that you want to track in here, things like that. So you're going to add the stuff. You'll probably add the specific day. And this is more fine-grained than the annual overview. The annual overview, again, is for the major milestone dates, anniversaries, things like that. This is for actual tasks and events and things that are happening day to day that you either know in advance. So like your first year future log, January might be mostly blank unless you just want to fill in some stuff that you migrated from last year's journal. That's usually where the January stuff comes from. But in the very beginning, you're already going to know, you're going to need to prep for XYZ. You're going to need to, there's a deadline coming up here. There's a task that, you put off until March, things like that. Now let's move straight on to the next section, the month summary. This is a section that you create at the beginning of every month. Not all in the beginning. You do this as you come to the first of every month. You create a new month summary and you migrate stuff to it. I'm going to draw it out briefly, and then we're going to move on to the daily log, and then we'll come back to the monthly log to show you how that fits in. Okay, so this section is the monthly summary. This is something that you draw, you create at the beginning of every month. You build it by filling in its sections from the year overview, that annual summary page. You bring in those important events. You make sure that you didn't forget anything. You migrate incompleted or uncompleted tasks from the previous month or week. You check all of your logs and everything, and you make sure that you have sort of it's kind of a brain space load in of, okay, we're in January now. Let's think about everything that's going to happen this month. Let's make sure that we have it here sort of in our new papyrus based brain space. So without diving in, I'll come back and dive into the specifics of this page, but first I want to move on and do the last most useful section of this entire system, the daily log. Okay, so that is the start and finish of a daily log. Let me zoom in on that for you. It's kind of like the other summaries, but just for the specific day. So in the morning, you'll get up, you'll crack open your book, you'll write the date at the top of the section, and you will list all of the tasks that you have for that day. Now, most of the tasks are going to come from previous days and previous summaries, the month summary, the year overview, or whatever. So you're going to be bringing a lot of stuff forward, and you're going to be writing things down again. Let me show you what this looks like. So let's say today is January 4th. Today, yes, we paid the mortgage, so we just fill in that dot. That's done. That was a high priority item. That's why it had the star next to it. I always put the main symbols in the second column, so I have room to the left of them for the annotation symbols like exclamation points for deadlines and such. So we had ship end product. Let's say we also finished that because that was a deadline today. We got that shipped. Let's say we started working on, let's see if I can make this a little bit clearer. We started working on editing this XYZ video, but we didn't quite finish. So that gets a half circle. We didn't even finish, we didn't even start listing this thing for sale. We did have our 7 p.m. dinner meeting, but we don't really mark events complete. That's more for tasks. Let's say painting the living room, man, just not right now. I don't even want that in my brain space anymore. So we're going to just strike that out. That's canceled. That's not going to happen. Shine shoes, we didn't get to today. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Not a big deal. We did find out today in our dinner meeting that Mark's name is actually spelled Mark with a C, which is kind of important because, maybe he's a potential investor in our company. So I just wanted to make sure I remember that. And you'd be surprised how human brains remember things better once you've actually physically written them down, which brings me to the first major advantage of the system over things like OneNote. Now, remember, I'm a nerd. I prefer doing everything I possibly can on the computer, but there is something about the tactile experience of this process that just functions better with human brains. And one of the ways it does that is by helping you remember things better when you write them down. So I just made a quick note here. Mark's name is actually spelled Mark with a C. And then by birthday present, we're not going to get to that either. So first day complete. Now we're going to go to January 2nd. It is now January 2nd, and we're going to crack open our book now, and I'm going to show you how this process works on the next day. So the way we build out our journal for the next day is by starting by looking at the previous day. So pay mortgage is done. That task was completed. We don't even have to ever look at it again. Edit XY video was not completed. It is still in progress. So we're going to migrate is the term for that. Migrate this forward, and we're going to signify that. We're going to mark it off the previous day's list by adding that little arrow. And if you remember our key, the little right arrow indicates migrated. And that's what we're doing. We're migrating this task forward in time to the next day's list. So we'll just simply write that again. Yes, today I need to finish editing the XYZ video. Moving on, obviously we don't have the dinner meeting again today, but we would go and we might check our might check our monthly log again to see if there's any major events coming up in that list, and we would make sure and add them to this day if those existed. So we might, let's say we find a new event on our monthly summary that's like, oh, well, today is so-and-so's birthday. Maybe that birthday that we were supposed to buy that present for the day before. So this is like a high priority thing. You know, we need to make sure and remember to buy that birthday present, which is now on a deadline. So we'll go ahead and bring that forward. Again, we'll mark it with a right arrow for migrated by present. I can't even type. I'm so behind schedule. Present. For this person. I can't even spell present. Whatever. It doesn't matter. This is only for your brain, not for everybody else to see. We didn't list that thing for sale yesterday. So again, right arrow. Circle, empty circle, list thing for sale. Paint living room was, we decided against that yesterday, but we could also cancel that task today. So like, you know, let's say last night we had left paint living room still an open, uncompleted task. Today we're like, yeah, we're done with paint living room. So rather than migrate it, rather than schedule it, we're going to just scratch it off. We're just going to, okay, we're done with that. And that is the second major thing. The second major advantage of this real life pen to paper process is that every morning when you're loading in your task list, you are taking seconds to consider everything on your shoulders to be done for that day. And not just like looking at a screen and copy pasting a list. That doesn't allow your brain time to load that item in, to think about it, to consider it. And then also there's something involved with the pain in the ass. There's a tiny micro pain in the ass that comes in play every morning when you are migrating an item forward in time. So let's say this paint living room thing had been on my list for 3 weeks. I've been wanting to paint the living room for 3 weeks, and I've had it on my to-do list to be done every day for 3 weeks. And you know, every morning having to rewrite a circle paint living room is just enough of a pain in the ass, not to affect your productivity really, but just enough of a pain in the ass to make you feel the weight of having an item on your plate. Having something taking up your RAM, your mental RAM, so to speak. And it gives you the process of just writing those words, you know, it might take 5 seconds of your time, but that's enough to process and to make a decision every day for every item on your plate. Do you keep migrating this forward? Is it really that important? Is it something that has to be done? If not, can it be canceled, strike it through, or maybe you just don't want to think about it, or maybe you want to, you know, like set a firm deadline for it for a day in the future. Maybe you want to revisit it next month. And that's where the other symbol that we haven't gotten to yet, scheduling, comes in. So let's just assume that we hadn't yet struck through paint living room. Let's pretend Shine Shoes was our event that we've been putting off, you know, every day for 3 weeks. And we want to set a day to get this task done. Well, we'll use our arrow the other direction now. And what this does is it gets it off our list, but not off our plate entirely. And what we would do when we schedule an item is we would go to our future log, and we would go to the day, or maybe even just the month. Maybe we don't want to set a day yet. We just said, oh, hey, we have this thing. Hold on, let me figure out Photoshop. We need to shine our shoes. And we've been putting this off. It needs to be done, but it's not an immediate priority. So this is a task that needs to happen in February. And now it is sort of off our plate. It's out of our mental RAM, which is really useful to kind of keep very tight curated control of your mental RAM when you are in a super productive mode of existence. Put it off. Now shine shoes or paint your living room or whatever it is that you scheduled is just totally like off of your brain space. It's like a relief. It feels good. You're not having to write that every day anymore. You're not maintaining it as something on your shoulders that you're feeling the weight of every day. But you haven't forgot about it. And so when you get to your February month summary, which we'll get to here in a moment, that's when you'll go and you'll look at your future log and your annual summary, your year overview, and you'll bring those items into the task list that was on the monthly summary, which I'll show you in a second. So let's just finish this out. We don't really do anything with notes unless, we need to turn the note into a task for the following day or something like that. And by present, we already migrated forward. So that's it. We're done. So now for today, as we're sitting here in the morning, we might also think of all sorts of things that we didn't think of before that we need to get done. And if I could figure out how to use Photoshop, this is where we would then go and add those tasks. We'd add notes. We'd add events for the day, if they were important, if they were deadlines, this is where we kind of set up our day, and then you're done. You go about the course of your day and you execute your plan, so to speak. You get shit done. And that is the core fundamental engine of this system. What you just saw us do, migrating tasks from one day to the next, considering each of those tasks, planning sort of your life and what you need to get done without losing anything. And if you lose something, it's only lost intentionally because you chose to either cancel it or schedule it for a future day or month or whatever. Now, the piece of this book that I didn't add is the weekly summary. If you are using weekly summaries, what you might do is be able to schedule tasks at the week level, and that's just kind of another step in the process. For me, man, once a month sitting down and doing that monthly summary page, that's enough for me. Like any more than that, and you never want the process of organization, you never want the process of being productive to become a hindrance on your productivity. So what I love about this system is that you just kind of have this monthly time. So there's obviously an initial, 30 minutes of time that it takes up to set up a brand new year's notebook. But that's a one-time thing. And then there's only once a month where you spend maybe 10 minutes creating the monthly summary. And then it's done. You don't touch it again for the month. The only thing you do in this system every day is just what you saw, these few lines here. Day's date, tasks from yesterday, check, cross them off, migrate them, schedule them, cancel them, mark them complete. And then throughout the day, you mark items in progress or complete, and that's it. So the day-to-day productivity, the thing that touches your day-to-day productivity is these, 5 to 10 lines on the page that you're just keeping up to date. That's the power of the system. You don't forget things, but you consider them every day, and it doesn't affect your productivity. Now, let's just drop back to the monthly summary so I can discuss this page a little bit more. Again, the top left, I draw out the days and the day names for each of the days of the month, just so that I can more, sometimes I'll sketch, if there's a convention, I'll bracket the days, or, I'll bring over the major holidays or the major events from the yearly summary. Really important stuff will just get jotted down here. This is not something I keep up to date as a task tracker. This is an overview, a summary, like a month at a glance. Here's the important stuff happening. The next thing to look at here on the month summary is the tasks section. So I always do a full spread for a month summary. A full spread means 2 pages back to back. You have your calendar on the left and you have a full page space for tasks on the right. This is in case you just have a lot of stuff that needs to get migrated around, or you have a lot of notes or whatever that you need to remember. So when you start a new month, January 1st, before you've done any daily logs for that month, you create your monthly summary. And this is where you do another migration. So you migrate all the tasks that were left open from the last daily log of the last day of the last month. You go through your, your annual summary. You might, briefly check any of your other notes or anything like that, and just load in the beginning tasks, the major tasks. Actually, I would say all of the tasks for that month here on the monthly log. Now, it may seem like an extra step, and you may decide not to do this, to then, when you start your first daily log, you're going to be bringing a lot of that stuff over again. So on your monthly log, you may choose to only put like the big tasks or the big events or the big deadlines. That is totally fine. The other thing you might end up doing with this page, though, is scheduling items for the same month you're already in. So if you're a week into the month and one of those tasks you need to schedule, you need to get it out of your brain RAM, but it's still going to happen maybe the end of the month or the last week in the month, you would then schedule that by putting it back on your monthly task list here. That's what this page can be used for as well. So you'll bring items forward out of your future log that you had scheduled to your future log. Don't forget your future log. That's part of this too. So that is what that section is for. Now, these last two sections, this is just stuff that Patrick does. So I have a goals section and a good things section, and you can literally do whatever you want here. And there's a lot of other little add-ons and tricks that people can teach you that you can add in the monthly summary page. Things like daily habit trackers. So if there's a task that is going to happen every day, like every day you want to go for a walk, or every day you want to do something, you want to, I don't know, whatever it is you do every day, you can put in a little daily tracker grid, which will have the date numbers across the top. It'll have the habit that you want to remember, and I'm not going to draw this now, but then it'll have a check mark box under each date, and you can have a list of daily habits and you can check them off. Just if you're the type of person that, needs sort of the habit ticking off progression thing, that can go here in the monthly summary as well. For me, my goals, these are more like personal growth things. Kind of like I did at the very beginning of the book, where I kind of put like an overarching theme I wanted for the year. For the goals, I'll put like overarching goals or themes or things that I want to remember and keep in my head for the rest of the month. Things like improving certain behaviors, maybe staying more calm in negotiations, maybe, I don't use the daily habit tracker type stuff, so maybe daily walks would be something I put here. Those are my goals. And so, when I'm starting a new daily log every day, I will often take a glance at this page, and I'll just really quickly glance through my goals to get those again, get those goals for the month loaded into my brain space every day. Really useful stuff. Good things. So this is kind of a personal thing. This is something that I found helps me. I've been going through obviously really tough time with medical issues for my daughter and my family. And so it just becomes a little bit difficult to maintain a good outlook on life sometimes. And so, I'll get to the end of a month and I'll be like, man, this was just a terrible month from end to end. Nothing good happened at all this month. And I was like, well, wait, that can't be true. That's not an accurate version of reality. Now that I think of it, I can think of a few good things that happened this month. So I added this good things section to my monthly summary. So as good things happen during the month, I make a mental point to come to this page and write down those good things that happens, so that when I get in that negative brain space, I can open it up and I can be like, okay, some good things are happening. Life is actually not all terrible. Anyway, so that's the kind of customization that you can add to this process that makes it really cool and really helpful and really productive. Now, one thing that we didn't keep updated as we went throughout this process was our index. So really quickly, let me just show you kind of how you would keep your index updated. So, we had the annual, I forget what I called it, the year overview or the annual summary. So I would go through and I would put, now remember that covers 4 pages. So I might put pages 1 through 4. Man, my handwriting sucks right now. Annual summary. I can't even spell. Ignore everything. And then, you'll have your future log, which ran from pages 5, 6, 7, 8. That was 4 pages, future log. This is stuff that will only really appear once in this entire book, so not important. Then you'll have your monthly summary. I think, what did we start that on page 9? So we'll put January summary. And then I do not add the daily logs, obviously, because that would just fill up your entire index very quickly. So we can obviously pretty quickly open to the page of January and then turn a couple pages to get to the day that we're looking for. If you're doing weekly summaries, if you choose to do that, you would probably add your weekly summaries to the index so you could maybe turn to those pages directly. And maybe it's up to you. Figure out what works. Try something for a week or 2 or a month, and if it's taking up too much index space and not helping, stop doing it. Or if you're having trouble finding pages quickly, start doing it. Find out what works for you. Screw the system. This is about you and making you more productive. And if anything gets in the way of you being more productive, then the system is a problem that needs to be solved or gotten rid of. Now, the last thing you use indexes for is the last part of this puzzle that I haven't really talked about much yet, and that is random pages of random content that you want to add. The daily summary might be the most important part of this, but you're carrying a book of paper around with you all the time. This is useful for many other things. Taking notes, drawing doodles, making lists of things to remember, maybe shopping lists, maybe not, maybe something more important like ideas for videos that you want to create, or maybe you want to get your thoughts out of your head on a topic, and maybe it works better for you, and try it at least if you haven't, because I used to like, if I wanted to make a video, or if I wanted to consider some philosophical topic, let's say, without getting controversial, maybe I wanted to talk about truth, or at least think about truth. Then what I'll do is I'll start a new page, and I'll turn to either a new spread or at least a blank page. And this can happen immediately after whatever daily summary you're on. It's not like you got to flip forward into your book or whatever. No, just go to the next blank page, label the page. This will be Thoughts on Truth. This will be the Thoughts on Truth page. And now on this page, you can make bulleted lists of thoughts. You can lay out logical, progressive, proofs, or you could just write long form on your thoughts on truth. And, this could take up half a page. This could take up an entire page. This could take up 7 pages. It literally doesn't matter. This is your book for doing things that make you happy and make you more productive and help you remember things and help you work through things and note taking. Maybe you want to draw. Maybe, you've got an idea in your mind and you want to get it out through whatever means necessary. Just grab an empty page, put a title at the top, grab the next empty page, put a title at the top. Make sure you've numbered the page at the bottom, go back to your index, put the page number, Thoughts on Truth. Done. And then, if you want to go back to your daily log and you run out of page on the daily log and the next page was your Thoughts on Truth, that's fine. Flip to the next page, next daily log entry. Done. Really low maintenance, not a lot of words. It's kind of an anarchist's way of organizing yourself in a really productive way. Use what works for you, throw out the rest. But this is how I successfully ran 2 companies simultaneously, even without getting lost, without letting things drop off my plate. I stayed organized. I stayed productive. And it's also rewarding to, check off the tasks when you finish them and to just keep things loaded in your brain. And the last thing I want to talk about is how to use this in conjunction with the other tools. Because in a business environment, you're almost always going to be on some kind of shared calendaring platform where other people can put in requests for your time on a calendar and, you can approve or decline or tentative them or reschedule them or, whatever. So there's going to be some other time tracking system in place. I try and delineate between meetings and journal type stuff. So if you're using the calendar thing in a business setting, it's almost always for meetings. You'll have meeting available hours. People will grab chunks of those time. So I don't really write any of that stuff in my bullet journal. So I look at my calendar for the meeting slots and the meeting times and all that stuff. I keep this stuff for actual tasks and more tracking type activity for me. That's how I do it. You can do it however you want. You could even customize this totally, keep the notes and the Thoughts on Truth type pages out if you want. Make it all about that if you want. It literally do what makes you most productive, chuck out the rest. So this has been kind of an interesting video for this channel. We don't always do productivity kind of talks, but I think this is important and useful and definitely improves my life and my ability to handle my business. So I hope this helped some of you guys. If it did help, give it a like, drop me a note in the comments telling me that you appreciate it and you're going to try it. If you have questions, if I didn't explain something well enough or clear enough, drop those in the comments as well. And give us a subscribe so you don't miss the future videos. Thanks for watching.